something you've always wanted to learn but never quite gotten around to? Have you always wanted to try ballet, or to speak Italian, or to make things out of clay? Well, why haven't you done it? My name is Emily, and I've always wanted to learn to play the drums. Who wouldn't? Drums are the coolest. It's a simple daydream, but it's one that I was foolish enough to talk about at length with my husband. Unfortunately for me, I married the thoughtful sort of person who, a couple of years ago on my birthday, surprised me with drum lessons. He was going to help me make my dream a reality. And I was thrilled! Except I wasn't thrilled. Fast forward 2 weeks and I was sat behind a drum kit for the first time in my life, feeling pretty much the opposite of thrilled, actually. You see, as adults, we tend to try and do our absolute best to avoid the sort of situation I'd just been lovingly plonked into. We don't like being absolute beginners at anything if we can help it. Despite the fact I was in a private lesson, I had a really nice teacher and he was the only person who was looking at or listening to me, I was paralysed by the fact that for the first time in a long time, I was doing something I'd never done before. And it was scary. But I should have known this. I work here as a class teacher in the lower school. All day, every day, I ask children to do things that they've never done before. It's kind of what teaching is. Here's something new, let's look at it together, break it down into chunks, now you understand it. But the kids I've taught over the years have never quite freaked out the same way that I did, sat behind that drum kit. Children don't worry about these new experiences because to them, doing something they've never done before is kind of an everyday thing. Earlier, the same day as my drum lesson, I was at work teaching my Year 1 class at the time. It was a Friday afternoon and the kids were having some time to finish up any projects they'd been working on. And one girl in particular caught my eye. She'd taken about 20 sheets of paper, folded them in half and stapled them together, and she was scribbling away like mad. So I went over and I said, "Hey, what are you working on there? What are you writing?" She stopped for a second, looked at me and said, "It's Lord of the Rings 4." And got straight back on with her writing. This 5-year-old child was writing a sequel to the most complicated fantasy series of all time. A couple of hours later, her much older and supposedly wiser teacher was too frightened to even pick up a drumstick and hit a cymbal. One of us had the right approach to learning, and it wasn't me. So there I was, sat behind my drum kit, having an existential crisis. After about an hour, my teacher had managed to get me to play a couple of basic beats, including We Will Rock You by Queen, a classic. But then I went back the next week and I had to play the same beats again, just a little bit quicker. The week after that, I had to play them on different parts of the drum kit. And all the while, something particularly painful was happening. My teacher was saying to me things like, "Let's look at that one together, shall we? That was nearly there, you almost had that. Let's break that one down into chunks." These were my lines. These were the things that I said to the kids in my class Monday to Friday. I was trapped in a funhouse mirror of supportive feedback where everything I said to the children in my class all week long came back to bite me on a Friday night as I stumbled my way through grade 1 drums. At work, I started listening more carefully than ever when a child came into class and told me that they'd tried kickboxing or that they'd ridden a horse for the first time. I had to know how they did it. How did these small humans just launch themselves into new experiences all the time without any of the panic that I was feeling? The kids all thought that I was getting really good at show and tell. But in reality, I was mining them for information. I needed all the help I could get to take with me on a Friday night to my drum lessons. And do you know what? Armed with the advice of my 5- and 6-year-old students, I started getting better at my drum lessons. And by that, I don't mean that I suddenly became a maestro of percussion. That still hasn't happened. What I mean is, I started getting better at learning. I stopped worrying about getting things perfect all the time, and I started just having a go. I started to get that big joy feeling that comes with working really hard at something and after a while getting a little bit better at it. And it made me feel amazing. It wasn't all plain sailing. There was, admittedly, the time where I learnt to play the open hi-hat, the cymbal you open and close with your foot as you play it with your hand. Tricky. There may or may not have been a drumstick that may or may not have been thrown. It wasn't my finest hour. But what it does mean is that when I've got a child in my class who always needs the toilet when a maths lesson starts, or who always manages to lose their book bag every time I ask them to come and read with me, I've got a bit more understanding of what that small person is going through. I always knew that I knew how to teach. I've got a postgraduate certificate in education, for crying out loud. But maybe what I'd forgotten along the way is what it actually feels like to learn. So, if there's one thing I want you to take from my time here today, it's that I want you to think about that one thing that you've always fancied learning. And just have a crack at it. Trip over in your first salsa class. Speak slow and broken French. If you have a particularly strong relationship, why not try learning to play the violin? You might find a surprising hidden talent that you never knew you had. But what you'll definitely find is a newfound respect for the children in your life. Because if we, as the adults in the room, are asking children to try new things as much as we all do, the very least that we can do is take the time to remember exactly what that feels like.